listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm joined with Ginger Slate and Riah Buckson. Ginger is a former art teacher of over 20 years, and Riah is one of her former students, a new tattoo artist, and close friend. They will be sharing tidbits of their lives and perspectives on art therapy, which is a specialized zone of mental health that focuses on utilizing art materials and the creative process in order to build self-esteem, reduce anxiety, explore different emotions, get into a Zen state of mind, and resolve other psychological conflicts. Join us as we discuss the powerful effects that the arts and creative expression have on human understanding and communication. Welcome to the show.
Such a beautiful day. Thanks for having us out.
Yeah, it really is. I love the fall in Tennessee. It's a wonderful time. Could you all share some background on yourselves and your journey with art?
I'll let you start on that one.
Well, my name's Riah. I'm a tattoo artist in Crossville, Tennessee. I'm here with my former art teacher, Ginger. Well, you're still a teacher, just not by the school system's terms. But, yeah, we have a great relationship, and we do a lot of art together and hang out a lot. And just wanted to come talk about art therapy because it's basically what I do all the time. Like, it's how I cope with literally everything. So it's a good thing to talk about.
And I'm Ginger Slate, a retired art teacher from Crossville, Tennessee. I guess I've always been an artist. Even as a child, I have fond memories of doing art activities and creative, fun stuff. So the whole, as you age, the expectations, how are you ever going to make a living as an artist? So throw that education certification on top of it, and you know that you'll always have a job. So
that was something I really struggled with growing up because I always wanted to be an artist. But people are like, this is, that's like starving artist. I would always hear that. If you're an artist, then you're probably going to struggle your whole life. But at one point when Etsy got big and I just started seeing other people were professional artists and they weren't starving. And, it was like I had to recreate like how I believed being an artist would be. And I'm like, no, if your heart's in it, if you're putting the work in, then there's going to be someone that appreciates it enough to help support you so that you can survive, and not just survive, but thrive. But my creativity had to go down other roads, not just with me like painting. So now I'm like, oh, well, when I create my podcast, I'm using that same creative force.
of course.
Or like when I'm teaching, I'm still being creative. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can't just embroider all day long. And like, that's not the only thing I'm going to be able to do in this life. But I do make some money out of it. Each thing I sell, I'm like, oh, someone believes in me enough. And it really has helped me just break the mold of like, okay, this is just some dream that couldn't ever be a reality. So.
Well, and here I am in my 50s, taking that leap of faith and saying, yeah, I can survive as an artist. I can do this. I can step out in faith, because it is fearing. I mean, right. it brings great fear into my gut.
right. Because you're like, I love this, but
But is anybody else even going to get it?
Right.
Does it appeal to other people?
Yes. Yeah. And I've had to also pull back and say, sometimes I make art for me.
Sure.
And, selling it isn't the goal sometimes. And I think some people are like, oh, I'm not an artist because I don't sell it. And I'm like, I don't know. So what do you believe about that? Do you think everyone's an artist?
I do. I think everybody, okay, yeah, somebody else that I follow, the whole, we are created in the image of God's. If we possess that, we all possess creativity, because what sets God apart from us is that ability to create. So if we don't have a desire to create something, then we're not human.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't matter what you're creating.
Right. It can take many expressions.
Absolutely. I just, the whole idea that you must draw or paint to be creative is so untrue.
Right.
Not
Right. Like
true.
musical artists, you know, they use the word artist to explain other mediums too. And I'm like,
Sure.
it is an art form because it's a form of self-expression.
Yes.
And that's like what we're really wanting when we're creating art is like, how can we express these things that we're seeing or feeling or whatever's on the inside? How can we express them? Yeah,
How
with
can
others.
I share that?
Yeah.
And the idea that if my soul desires that I make it, then there's somebody out there that it speaks to.
right. And you're just following the call. I have that happen sometimes where I'm like, I just really want to paint this random famous person or whatever. And it's not always about me, you
Right.
know? So I'm like, oh, and then there'll just be one person that loves that person specifically. And I'm like, okay, well, this painting was yours. It was always going to be yours.
Well, yesterday was that big huge ball game, that big
Oh,
huge
yeah.
football game. And my mother asked, "Are you coming over to watch the ball game?" I said, "No, I'm painting today.
Right.
I've got this idea and I've got to see it through.
Mm-hmm.
I'll listen to it on the radio, but no."
Right. Yeah. You have to like give it space, you know, and
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
sacred in the like that time that you spend like in your studio, whether that's your bedroom or whatever, you know, where you're creating, like it's important to make space. I think sometimes people think, oh, how do you get all this stuff done? And I'm like, well, it's because it's important to me. So I make the time for it, you know.
And that so was part of our conversation on the drive over. You know, that changing of your mentality. If I want to call myself an artist, then I have to make art my work.
Right.
And I have to show up for work every day because I'm not a god and it doesn't create itself.
Right. You can't just snap your
So,
fingers.
right? Wouldn't that be the best?
It really would
I
be.
have this great idea. Now, how am I going to make that happen?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how much time it takes to get to the point that you are able to make that image happen.
Right.
And it takes time.
Yes.
And I think, you know, that you're going to fool yourself and say, first time I put a pencil in my hand, I am going to be a great drawer.
You're right.
That's the way it works.
Instant Picasso.
No. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah. I have to work with my son with that because he really just wants to be like amazing right out the gate. Like he's in gymnastics and he watched this like a professional gymnast and he was so jealous. And he was like, Mom, I don't want to see that, you know? Like, and I'm like, no one expects you to do 5 backflips your first day. But he's like that with art sometimes too. So we've been like taking it in strides and like coming back to art. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be done in one session. And I think that that's where he's seeing like these layers, you know, being built. And I'm like, art takes time, you know, not everything. Sometimes people can do like a Pollock and throw some paint and it's done, you know, and that was what they wanted. But like most of us, you know, it's a thought. We have to kind of meditate, you know, we have to think about what materials, you know.
How am I going to make all this actually come together at some point in time?
Right.
You know, because Riah and I were talking about that whole, how liberating the whole mixed media thing is and building the layers. But at some point that has to be resolved.
Right.
You know, it doesn't become a piece of art until you find that resolution, whatever that may be. So,
Right.
yeah, building those layers is a lot of fun.
I know. I
And
love
can spend
that.
a lot of time doing it.
Yes, I love like this painting that is here. You know, it's like 30 layers. That was 30 days of new
layer a
colors. Yeah, new colors on top. But then like you could see how it covered little pieces, but then other pieces like stood out more now that these other colors were like
Yes.
in contrast with them. And it was just coming alive without me even putting much thought into it. And I love grid paintings for that reason, where it's just
It's kind of
it's
magical.
abstract.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm like, I showed up for work. I did the layer that day, you know, and I didn't know what it was going to look like, but it's still one of my like favorite paintings. you
Right.
know?
And that whole stepping out in faith, not knowing what's going to happen today.
Right.
You know, I'm going to try this again today.
Yes.
I'm going to do it one more time.
Yes. I love taking like pictures along the way. And I think it helps people that think they can't do art because they just see the end result. And I think breaking it down and saying, well, this was day 1. And then like over the 30 days, they see, okay, she didn't do this in 5 minutes. So maybe I could do it too if I didn't just sit down and for 5 minutes and try to draw this horse as quickly as possible and it didn't look right, and I'm like.
And then I give up because it doesn't look just like my mind perceives it should look.
Right.
Which where's the creativity?
Exactly.
I've got a phone. It takes photos.
Exactly. Yes.
I don't need a photo.
Right. Unless you're just really into portrait painting. I mean, some people do that.
And they are, and they're really good at it,
But not all of us are meant to be that. And I think that's where some of the artistic spark in people kind of dies, is because they start trying to say, oh, well, I'm not Alex Gray. And I'm like, well, Alex Gray is like amazing. I mean, he like studied in morgues and he put all this work into it. But like, no one expects you to be Alex Gray. Right. You know what I mean? But it's like
he is.
Right.
We don't need another one of him.
And I don't think he would want you to like give up on art because you didn't, draw the perfect anatomy of the physical body every time, but that's like just his thing. Like,
sure.
I like to draw little anime characters sometimes. And I'm like, that's my thing. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but like there are other people out there that love seeing little Totoros. And I'm like,
absolutely. And people are making big bucks designing those little things these days, right?
Right. Because no one else is doing it, So like you can paint anything, or you could draw anything, or, or sing, or whatever.
Are we going to put this in a box? No.
Right. So I feel like, comparison is where we're losing people because they're
the death of creativity.
Yes.
Comparison is the absolute death of creativity.
Yes.
It's that moment that teacher looked and compared your work to that one's work and said, look how much better theirs is than yours. And Riah will say, I was honest and blunt.
Oh, yeah.
I'm willing to tell you, I know you can do better than what I'm seeing in front of me.
Right.
But I'm not going to ever say that's bad.
Right.
We've got something we can work with here, but let's push it.
Right. Let's define it a little bit more. Let's add, like
make it your own.
Yes. I love that. I didn't have like the best art teachers as a kid, so I had to go through a lot of this stuff like kind of on my own, and like her talking about you being such a good support in her life and all that. And I'm like, not everybody has the blessing of having an art teacher that really is trying to build you up, like almost in a spiritual way too. That it's not just, okay, you're going to make this product and there's this end to it. And it's like, no, this is like a lifelong journey, and no one taught me that. So.
Lifelong learning, right?
Yes.
As educators, we preach lifelong learning. Well, can we not be lifelong creatives?
Right.
And it doesn't always have to look the same. There's something for everybody.
Right. Yes, I totally.
Draw cars.
Yes.
If you're into cars, draw cars.
Yeah, because some people love that, and they
hang them on your walls. People buy them.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Yes, and if you're, feeling more at peace because you're sitting there making that, it's almost like this meditation, and you're making it just how you would want it. Maybe you couldn't actually buy that car, but you can create your own version of that car. Yeah, so I love that. So.
I would never say, oh no, I don't want you to draw that. I might ask you to draw something different.
Right.
Than what you...
Because that's like the practice of it. There's so many lessons that my college art teachers would give us. Like we're all drawing the same thing. Well, that's kind of boring. But it taught me how to like see the shades.
And then as the teacher walking around the room, that although we're all drawing the exact same thing, there's not two drawings in this group that ever look the same.
Right. Because everyone's sitting in a different place.
And they perceive it differently. And they, it's never the same.
Right.
Thank God.
Yes.
Oh, right?
Yes. And a lot of that stuff, that I learned from my art teacher, I realized like she was teaching me the rules so that I could break them one day and like get into that flow. But like if I didn't have the foundation of like shading, some of just the basics, then I would be like, oh, my art's just, it's not looking like how I want, because there is supposed to be some darkness here and some light here and these different variations. As much as I didn't love those classes because I wanted to just do psychedelic everything and I didn't want
Yes.
black and white still lives,
Yes.
you know, I learned so much more by doing the boring stuff. And
Yes.
like, this is what all the great artists, they have to, we all start with
And I think about
the
that
pencil.
so much these days. You know, in fact, at some point I've even posted, it feels so weird to try and break rules because I've spent all these years teaching the rules. And here I sit, today I have to break a rule, you know, I have to break a rule today. That whole weird feeling of stepping out of your comfort zone. And then using some of these things that you're playing with as kind of metaphors in life. You know, today I'm really going to focus on value. Really going to think about and then you start thinking about the word value. And I always loved this one anyway. I would pre-test my students every year for state evaluation purposes. And one of the questions would be, what is value? And so you get back all these answers about what value is. Value. How much it's worth. How much you care about it, you know. And then you have values, personal values. So, yeah, okay, value. Yeah, I'm not going to just think about light and dark. Let's think about personal values. How do personal values affect my art? Why do I choose the things I choose in relation to my values? So using things like that as little art therapy nuggets when you're trying to go into that flow place.
Right.
So you're really setting your intent before you go in. Oh, today let's think about it.
Yeah, I love that. Thinking about putting intention into the art. That's beyond what the image you're trying to create.
Absolutely.
But like, what are you trying to feel? You know, what's like on this deeper level? You know, what are you trying to get at? So,
Well, isn't that it? What makes good art separate from great art? It touches your soul.
right.
You know, I can look at pretty pictures all day long, but when it really moves you,
Right.
and that's that expression, that soul thing coming through the art.
Right. And many of the artists that move me aren't trying to create like this realistic landscape. You know, like you think of Van Gogh. I mean, it was amazing, and it's because it had like an aura to it, and it moved, and it didn't look exactly like the night sky looks. It has this flow. You can see the
But you
flow.
felt it.
Yes, like I could.
Absolutely felt it.
Yes, there's like light trails in it, and you know, when I look at the sky, sometimes I think about that painting, and I think about what he saw, but like how he felt when he looked at the sky is what he was conveying. You know.
So we really move into those abstract expressionists. And
Yes.
what was it? Oh, we've got cameras.
Right.
We can reproduce an actual reproduction of anything.
Right.
Now we have to let's talk about what's from here.
Right.
Let's talk about the soul. Let's talk about what we're trying to say. More important than maybe how we say it.
Exactly. So I know you've utilized art as therapy. Could you explain a little bit more about like some of the benefits and some of the ways people can do art therapy?
You know, as I said, always set an intent. I think that, yeah, when you kind of open yourself up and say, I'm not doing this for a specific outcome. I'm not going to be so in control. Because just like life, when you're willing to let go, that's when the healing starts. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for. And then making time for your practice, you know. No, regardless of the type of therapy you choose to use for your healing, it doesn't work if you don't do it.
Right.
Show up. You know, there are some great programs out there. And so many ways to approach art therapy. You know, as we say, art is so multi-layered, and what works for one person is not going to be the right thing for somebody else. Find somebody that speaks to your soul. There's so many resources.
Well, art for me kind of started as a coping mechanism more than anything, and to some people that's kind of sad, but that's just how it started. Was to me it was kind of just a distraction, and just over time I just got better at it and it turned into this beautiful thing, and I kind of just want that for everybody without having stipulations in their head about, well, it doesn't look good enough. I think good is subjective, and I don't think there is good or bad in art. I think there just is, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I love your art so much. Like just following your journey and seeing you grow as just, a person, and through life and going through challenges, but then making this beautiful art. Like your colors are so vivid, and I'm just like, her soul is so beautiful, and I could see your colors through your expressions.
Black and white has its place, but I love my contrast.
Yes,
and all the in-betweens.
Yes, and just the images you do. My favorite image that you've ever done that I think about was the Krishna. I think it was with pencils. Was it?
Yeah, I forgot all about that. I think 14 when I did that. But yeah, it was a lot of work. I had those Prisma pencils.
Yes.
And I spent hours on it. I think it won a ribbon at the fair because I entered it in the fair. But yeah,
that was a big part. Is color pencil was her portfolio her senior year, which was amazing.
I just like eye-catching things. I've just
lots of color.
Always been like that. And I like black and white too. Mm-hmm. I like using everything to kind of complement itself.
Mm-hmm. At that point, I hadn't used a lot of color pencils. It's like I just didn't think about like that you could even make the colors that vivid. But when I saw that Krishna, I was like, oh wow, like yeah. I can't even believe I didn't know what medium it was because it was so well blended. It left me guessing.
Layers and layers. Yeah, it was awesome.
It really was. So, and your tattoo work is just phenomenal, and I don't know. I'm never worried about it. I'm like, she could do anything. I totally trust her to make this beautiful.
Well, good. I need people's trust.
Yeah.
I'm glad they feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, tattooing is, it's similar but different. It's kind of a different clientele, but I get in a flow with it too, especially when people bring me their ideas and they trust me. It makes me a lot more relaxed about the whole thing, especially since if I don't think I can do a good job on something, I won't take it in anyway. Mm-hmm. But it's gotten pretty relaxing for me once I actually get set up and get into the mood and they're relaxed. Then it's a pretty cool thing. Yeah, I like it at that point. It becomes fun.
Yeah, the whole process, I feel like as an artist, like the work part, like getting the advertising and like getting the room set up, all that's like exhausting. Yeah. Work. But then you finally get to sit down like at your easel and you're like, okay, this is why I put all of that mundane time. I got past the harder part and now I get to do the expression, and it's just so wonderful at that point.
It is. It is. That's when it's freeing. That's when it's liberating. That's when you understand the therapy is paying off.
Right. So, do you teach art therapy or?
No, I have taken some online classes for teaching art therapy. No, I think that art is therapy in itself. I mean, that's what art is. Mm-hmm. So I'm just more of an advocate of having spaces where people can make art. Mm-hmm. I think we need to build that into our communities.
Right.
I think people need creative spaces. Like you're saying, the hard part's getting all the mess out.
Right.
Wouldn't it be great if you had a place where you could have your mess?
Right. Yes.
So, yeah.
I think that it's definitely like a setback for some people is like, they're like, what materials would I need? And I think that's where us like making these random videos and showing our process is so important, and it goes beyond what we're even doing because we're showing people I added water, I used sand, I let it dry for 3 hours, and it's like, but if you haven't just taken the classes and played and watched it, morph and all that, I feel like it's hard to understand what the heck these people did, but that's one of my favorite things on Instagram is they do the time lapse. Yes. And I'm like, this is so nice. Cause like, I do feel like I could use that medium because I was able to finally see it, but, yeah, art has definitely been a therapy for me too. And even as a kid, I mean, I would just sit around and color and, I wish I'd had more materials because I can only imagine where I would be now if I had I was just used to broken crowns and, my parents didn't really invest into my art until later when I met my dad. And when I met him, it was so weird. It was like, he was like, oh my gosh, my daughter's an artist. And he bought me all these canvases and he would just supply me.
Yes.
But this was, I'm like a teenager at that point. And, but it took that long for someone to be like, maybe we should buy her paint, like maybe we should put her in a class. But it was like my father seeing my stuff and being moved by it made me realize, okay, maybe I could do this. And he bought my first painting, like the first thing I ever sold. And it's like, sometimes that's important with our little communities. We make something and they support us,
yes.
And then that gives us this encouragement of, okay, I could be an artist. So I'm all the time buying people's art and I'm like, this is amazing, and they're
building community,
right?
Because that is what makes art work.
Yes. I buy other people's art even though I create art, but sure. I don't want just my own art in my house. No. I mean, I do have plenty of it, but a lot of times I'll swap or trade or
that happens in my house too.
Yes, it's like all these collages, but it's just sort of the inventory that I'll trade later.
Yep.
Yes, so it is so wonderful when people see the value in it, and then when we do these trades and stuff, we're kind of creating our own system and our own value.
We are giving value to what we create.
Right. So when people bring me food and trade, I have my friends that have a farm and I'll give them art and they'll bring me a bunch of
paintings. That's awesome.
And I just love that, and I just love how we support each other because I'm so into, creating an art and all that. I don't spend as much time on the plants and some of that, but I love plants, and I love learning stuff about farming, but it's just we can't do everything.
Right.
But everyone can do something. And yes. So then we come together and we're like, oh, this is your thing, and I'm learning so much just by supporting other people, so
building community.
Yeah. Yes. Community is so big. I think people, a lot of us are sad and we're having a hard time, in this age, and it's because we're so separated,
Again, wouldn't it be great to have a space
right
where we came together?
Mm-hmm.
And we got to be creative.
Yes.
We didn't talk about all the stuff that bothers all of us.
Right.
We just got to be creative.
Right. It's beautiful.
Going back to high school art class, right?
Yeah, you made that a fun space. I appreciate that. Didn't really feel much pressure. Just was kind of able to just be.
Let's do it.
Right.
You know what you make, you know what you're good at.
Right. Yeah. I'm teaching a program called Life as Guru, and we go into mythologies, we study other cultures, but at the end, I'm trying to always have a creative exercise.
You must.
And so I try to change the mediums up, and sometimes we'll do watercolor, and I'll try to tell people, I'm like, if you think you suck at watercolor, it's probably because you're using the wrong paper. And so I've been trying to show them you are an artist. Anyone can do watercolor, but if you're using the crappy brush that they put in the thing,
brush and not enough water,
right? Yes, that you layer,
get a good paper that'll take a lot of water.
Yes, but I love it, and so many people are making this beautiful stuff. I'm like, I didn't even know you could do this, and they're like, I didn't either, and I'm like, but they just needed some support. They needed some inspiration. So sometimes whatever myth that we're reading, I might be try to express how you felt when you read this myth. Maybe we'll do sigils where they'll make their own sigil based on whatever symbols are standing out to them. And it's been so great. It's like Waldorf for adults, I feel like. But I'm like,
And what's wrong with that?
Right. Because some of us didn't learn as children, we didn't learn how to be expressive. And I love Waldorf for that because they teach dance, they teach art, they teach like all this nature stuff. So if you didn't learn all that as a child, it's not too late as an adult. It's so important.
It's so important. And it's almost like a whole generation that lost touch with earth,
Yeah.
getting their feet in the dirt. Ooh, no, you can't get dirty.
Right. Right. You wouldn't want to make art because you'd have to clean it, you know?
Right? No, we can't. No, we'll get dirty.
Right. And I just remember being a kid in art class and just loving it. But these other people just like, they didn't take it seriously. And then you hear I couldn't draw a stick figure. That's like every time I hear that, I'm like, please stop spreading that. That blasphemy.
That's so horrible.
I promise you can draw a stick figure. I don't care who you are. Please stop.
Yeah, have you even tried? Have you tried? I mean, this is not rocket surgery, right?
Right. And I'm like, if you can't draw a stick figure, maybe you should try some landscapes. Like maybe
A
like
few horizontal lines. Let's see what happens. Do you know which way those go?
Yes, for sure.
Well, and then we talked about origami too. And, just the flow of getting into folding a piece of paper that all of a sudden you pull one direction and it's 3-dimensional. That's just magic.
Yes.
That's just magic.
Yes. I've played a little bit with some of the 3-dimensional stuff. And it's not, I'm not like amazing at it, but I still like to play with it.
Fun.
And every now and then, like something where I do the Kiwi crates. I don't know if you know about them, but they have one for adults, and it's just
had an adult one.
Once a month I get some random thing. It's like candle making or tie dyeing, and it just changes it up. And I don't master everything.
Sure.
But sometimes I'll be making my own art and I'll be like, oh, I have this random tool from that Kiwi kit. So it's like, it actually teaches me different tools that I haven't worked with yet. And then it allows me to start thinking out of the box a little bit about like, how could I do mixed medium with, if I used this with that, and
What would happen? Right.
Right.
What would happen?
And sometimes I make a big old mess and I clean it up.
Okay. Right?
Yeah.
No harm, no foul.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I now have carpet with paint splotches, but someday we'll pull the carpet up and
Right. Exactly.
it really doesn't matter.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the other thing. Do it. That mess doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't.
Right.
You
Right.
clean house anyway.
Exactly. It doesn't really add that much. And then
And think of how many creative outlets, you were talking about embroidering. It doesn't take a lot of space to have your embroidery stuff.
Right.
Or to knit or crochet. And you're still making choices all along the way.
Right. Yes. That's one of the reasons I learned embroidery, is because after I had my daughter, I can't be using like these chemical based paints in the house. We don't have great ventilation, and I love oil paint. That's my thing. When I do acrylic paint, I get a little grouchy because I'm like, it's drying too quick. It's not spreading, but I do learn a lot by just forcing myself to do acrylic paint sometimes. But I was like, I want to be able to just, if she's napping on me, I have it right there. All of my colors are ready. I can pull it out whenever I want. And so that was when my artistic thing shifted and I evolved into a whole nother medium that I'm slowly feeling like I'm mastering. And it all came from because I didn't have the time to clean up the mess right then, and I only had short windows. So then you get all your paint ready and your kid wakes up and then you're like, well, I just wasted $5 worth of paint. And so, yeah, you evolve with what's going on in your life at the time. I know as I get older, I'll probably want to do more like pottery and learn all sorts of other things. But right now, embroidery is just great for me.
I think about that and going back through. So as a child, I remember the whole learning to embroider on my pants.
Right.
So wearing your art on your legs.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother's, one of them did a lot of crocheting, so I learned to crochet, and the other one knit.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the crocheting clicked more than the knitting.
Mm-hmm.
But I love textiles. My mother was a seamstress and sewed most of our clothes. So, yeah. And now I'm starting to see that come into my work. I find myself putting stitch marks, in my work, or the multimedia, pulling pieces of fabric. So, you have something you like. Oh, yeah. See, I just cut it out and
Right.
stick it in there. So it's funny how this whole thing cycles around through the things you love and brings you it brings it all together.
Right.
Yeah, my projects right now, I looked at some of my high school pieces and laughed. There was burlap and jute and modeling paste. And I recently came across somebody that was using fabric and modeling paste in their work. And I was like, oh my goodness. So this series I'm working on right now has modeling paste and burlap. And before it's finished, there'll be pieces of jute in it. And let's make it full circle. Let's just go back to when's the last time I loved painting? When I did that.
Right. Yes, I feel like if you just sort of are listening to how you're feeling when you're doing it, that's when you'll find the perfect medium for you,
Oh, because I went through this really just weeks ago frustrating moment where I just started drawing on all of my paintings.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't even like to paint. I'm a drawer. I don't like this painting thing.
Right.
When's this going to come back to me? I used to love to paint. And this isn't fun. It's frustrating. And so, yeah, I took pencils and chalk to them, and I just, yeah.
Right.
So it was nice Crayola oil pastels that just melt when you put water on them.
Right.
It was like, this is liberating,
Yeah.
I like to draw.
Right.
I like to draw.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to, once you figure out your thing, like you never have to sample anything. Some people they are drawer, like they sketch.
See, I dabble. I'm a
yeah,
dabbler.
I'm a dabbler too. Yes.
Like you say, I like embroidery. And I like weaving. I've got little pieces on looms. When do we say enough is enough?
Right.
Is that part of it too?
Right.
Or do we just keep going? Is that the call? Do you just keep going?
Yeah, learning like when to say something's finished is hard for me. Because I'm like, is it ever really finished? But there is a point where I'm satisfied and I'm ready for a new experience. So sometimes I'll move on. But like you might come back 10 years and decide, I'm going to draw on this. So maybe you're ready to go back into that.
Yeah. Oh, and these days of mixed media make that so easy.
Right.
I love that. Don't like this? That's fine.
Right.
We can cover it up.
Exactly.
I have the technology and I can cover that up and start over.
Right. Yes. So we're always allowed to start over. That's with my son. Like he'll make a wrong mark and I'm like, you paint white on top of it, like
It's not a big deal.
erase it or like somehow make that a new stroke.
And I am a firm believer, the whole wabi-sabi, embrace the imperfection.
Right.
Absolutely. That shows my hand was in it.
Right.
And there's something very valuable about the touch of the human hand in creation.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes.
Leave my mark.
Yes. I've been playing with watercolor and sometimes I'll, if I'm doing something that I'm going to sell, I try to do it alone, like where my kids aren't running around. But sometimes I'll just let them run around and they're like hitting the table and my hand will move. And I've been doing these sort of mandalas where I just roll with that.
Yeah.
And I'll actually try to create balance on the other side, even though it's like squiggly. And the last one I did, I ended up framing it because I loved it because I could see all of the imperfections.
And you knew what they came from as well.
And so it was like storing like this memory of my children just being wild, and
And still finding the time to create.
Right. And they like to paint with me, so they sit at the table, they're knocking stuff over, it's just a whole mess. And I'm like, well, that's awesome. Like, I love that I can see in my painting that you accidentally spilled this orange juice on it. And so it created a whole new expression,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I have some of those moments. Mine are more the teacher moments, working on something and somebody walks by and knocks it. You're like, well, that's what was meant to be, wasn't it?
Right? You have to
That was
release
not my
control. Yes.
Was not my plan, but it'll be all right.
Exactly. I love that. It almost helps us learn non-attachment in that way.
Oh, and is that not another therapeutic part of the whole art thing?
Right.
Let it go. There is nothing that you put on a piece of paper or on a canvas or on a wall that is so precious that it cannot be covered up.
Right.
There's a nice metaphor for life.
Right.
Bring us your worst. It'll be okay.
Yes. Yes. I definitely use art to help me just relax, and I'm on the spectrum, so I'm a little neurodivergent. And so everyone's, they're like, they have the thing that they do when they're really anxious. And so mine's been embroidering lately. It used to be sketching, in school. I would always be drawing. And, sometimes the teachers would be kind of rude to me and be like, you're not listening.
You're
and
not
I'm like,
paying
no,
attention.
I actually, when I'm stimming, it helps me take in even more information. Since I'm not really looking at them, but I'm like absorbing. And that's like when I'm stitching, when I'm in the flow, because I've already sketched it. So the form's there. And then I just get in the flow, and it's like I can be in these situations where I'm really stressed. Like maybe I'm in a room full of people, but I'm like, I've got my little stitching,
That's right. I can focus right here.
Yes, when I was a kid, it was my coloring book, and I would sit there during like these football games, things I didn't really want to go do, but because I had my notebook or my coloring book or whatever, I was able to just zone out and kind of go into my own world, and it was really healing for me because I had more control there, and I was like, I don't have to sit in this class, and maybe I don't want to listen, maybe I just want to draw a Hello Kitty on the side of my notebook, and that's what I need today, Just like I always knew that there was something to like sketching during these stressful situations or like where you're somewhere you don't necessarily want to be, or maybe it's just a bad place in your head,
Well, and I am a firm believer in the whole right side, left side of the brain, and I do think we escape by going to the right side of the brain. That's our escape place for most of us.
Right.
And that's where the creativity is. So doesn't it make sense that using art as therapy and pulling us into that flow place, which releases us from all the worry, all the stress, all the minutia that picks at our brain all day?
Right. Yeah. I love that. I think I've had a couple people be surprised that like some of the music I like to paint to, and I'll be like, oh, I really love painting to Radiohead, and they're like, well, that's depressing, and I'm like, but I make my most colorful pieces when I'm listening to like Radiohead, and like because there's some weird journey I go down.
I love Radiohead.
You've got to say something about that. Now, what
They're not
about the whole
depressing.
music thing? Right?
Oh yeah, I have music on when I tattoo always. It's usually lo-fi, but I gotta have something playing. It just helps. It's another art I can listen to while I'm doing my art.
Right.
Art all around.
It's funny because I like to do really beautiful things, and I'm not doing like some morbid figures out in some haunted forest, and I love art like that too, but that's not my style. So people are always like blown away that I'm not just listening to the Beatles nonstop, and I love the Beatles, don't get me wrong, but I don't paint to that.
No.
I like listening to things that have lots of emotions, as I'm
Yes.
selecting colors, and I'm also, because I am doing it like therapy, sometimes I'm like getting into those dark places and I'm releasing them, and now they're on the canvas and they're not in my head anymore,
Yes.
and I've like released some weird thing, and I just totally like relate to Tom York in that way, and I feel like he might be a little neurodivergent too, and so like when I'm listening to him be all upset about something, I'm like,
Yes.
he's getting it out, and that's me. So it's just so funny that people think, oh, you're so colorful and bubbly, you must have such a beautiful everything, and like you only listen to positive things, and it's, you know, and I'm like, no, like there's balance, you know, to that. And so
Well, it's part of my own personal art therapy journey right now is doing some of that inner child work. And then just that whole going back. What did you love as a child?
right.
So, you know, what is your child telling you and all this? So, yeah, the bright colors. And want to use paint straight out of the tube. Who
Right.
said you can't use paint straight out of the tube?
Right.
Who said that? That's a lie. You sure can.
Right.
And you can put colors together that they told you couldn't put together.
Right.
You know, you're allowed to do that.
Yes, I still catch myself drawing sometimes the exact same things I drew as a kid, like lots of spirals.
Spirals are one of mine as well.
Yeah, and the sun
Circles,
and the
yes.
moon.
Lots of moons, some stars.
Yes, and that, like, I still go back to that, you know, and I might even draw it exactly as I would have as a child, but then I like elaborate and I make it different, you know, so I'll turn that landscape into something more than just the sun and the tree.
One flower.
Right. You know, I might do a whole scene, but it still starts there. So it's like, even as a child, you know, I wanted to express my love for nature and like the cycles and, you know, the seasons and all the colors of all the flowers. Like, and that was my thing. I would just draw flowers on everything, you know, or peace signs or, you know, aliens doing the little,
I love it.
you know,
Yeah.
so it's like, it's okay if that's what you focus on, you know? So like, I know this girl that's like, her whole thing is she draws cute animals.
What's wrong with that?
Right. But she make like that. So many people are inspired by that. And they're like, I like cute animals too.
Just
You
bought
know?
a cute animal, how to draw cute animals book recently.
Right.
I did.
It's like, and it's awesome, you know, that she's sharing that with others and showing her steps. And because like art doesn't have to look like realistic. Like the animals can be cute and have little big eyes and, you know.
Well, and that whole funny thing, are you afraid to share what you do with other people? Aren't you afraid they're going to steal it?
Oh,
They're going to
yes.
steal your ideas and that the whole that's always been so far-fetched for me because as an art teacher, you understand. You give 30 kids the same thing to draw and you get 30 different drawings.
Right.
The idea that anybody could identically reproduce your work
Right.
is just so ridiculous. You know, if they're going to spend enough time to recreate a process, it's not going to look like what happened when you did the process.
Right.
So that idea that we would never share how we do things, the process through which we create our stuff. And why would we? That's one of my peeves with the teaching thing. Educators, it was always like, oh, my best lesson. I have to hold it right here. I can't tell you what I do. I
Right.
can't share it with you because you're going to steal my ideas. I mean, how ludicrous is that? Our best work comes when we collaborate and we're sharing our ideas, you know, learning from each other. So the idea that artists would play so close to their no, I can't tell you. It's a secret.
Right. And I think that's, you know,
silly is
maybe
that?
the survival thing where they really do believe like, oh my gosh, if everyone learns this, you know, that was me with embroidery. I hit this point, I'm like, should I teach everybody to embroider? Because then what if no one buys my embroidery? I'm like, no, because no one's going to be embroidering like Toth and stuff like me. Like no one's going to,
They're not going to do what you
they're
do.
going to do different subjects.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to just teach an embroidering class, you know? And like, why does it matter? Like, but there's been many people in my life, even when it comes to their ideas and their philosophy, and they're like, I don't want to share it because then everyone's going to jack my stuff. And I'm like, by the time that person tries to steal your ideas and jack it, you're going to be on to something totally different because because you are creative. So you're always creating. So something you created 3 years ago, if someone wants to recreate a YouTube video on some conversation you had, who cares? Like you're already on to something else, you know?
Right? Oh, what's the big deal?
Yes. And it does hold us back in that way. And,
So artists as teachers, yes. I think that's part of the calling as well. You know, artists create to share.
right.
What is the value of the work if you never share it?
Right.
That's my personal lesson right now.
Yes.
This is one of the ones I'm working on right now.
Yeah, for sure. I've even been sharing the stuff that, I have no intention to sell. I'm like, it's not even an option. I'm like, this is not for sale. But this was something I drew in my journal today, where I just started messing with paint colors, and this is what came out. And I do that so that people can see that art doesn't have to be there. There's no, yes, sometimes we set an intention, but sometimes my intention is just to relax.
Yes. Just to put stuff on paper can be the intention for
Right.
sure.
And just to see how these two things blend. Sometimes that's the intention, and
Right. I never tried this color with this color before. Let's try these two and see what happens. Mm-hmm. How many variations of color can I get from the two of these?
right.
Those days happen.
Yes.
And we need them to happen. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that's like the trial and error. We're doing little experiments all the time, but that's life too,
Yes.
we're dabbling in little things we're learning along the way. We're like, oh, when I mix this person and that person, that didn't that didn't work out so good. Maybe I'll try a different combination next time. But
I've had that experience before.
Yeah.
Oops.
I feel like with yoga, a lot of times they'll be like, take the yoga off the mat. And they'll look at yoga like a philosophy. And that's the part I actually love about yoga. I'm like, everything in life's actually like that. Take the art beyond.
Out of the studio.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And it can like really help you grow as a person and like help you become whole. So I've studied like a lot of Carl Jung and just his mandalas and his whole process in creating and all that. And it really helped me see art as like not just therapeutic, but like bringing me back to myself. So and
that authenticity place. Yes.
right. And if I'm imitating, then I'm not doing that. If I'm just trying to do something like someone else has already done, well, how is that serving me? Unless I'm just trying to learn a style or something.
Again, yeah. Those experiments, those practice along the way things.
Right. Like, but even Bob Ross, like you're doing the painting with him, right? But at one point he's like, go find your own landscape, go take what you've learned from these different.
It your own, sure.
Yeah. And find your own.
Well, what is that book? Steal Like an Artist?
Right.
And that whole thing, you are going to get to a point that you're going to need help.
Right.
And sometimes that help might come through finding an artist that inspires you.
Yes.
Ooh, that would be a way to resolve that. And it's not copying.
Right.
I'm using that piece of art as a place to help me resolve what I've got going on. So I steal like an artist.
Right.
A creative's not going to make it look just exactly the same.
Right. I mean, it's like that with language too. I mean, they're like everything's already been said and to some extent, but you can, you might be repeating something, but you're saying it from your own perspective. You have your own life story that's led you up to that point where you might share a similar philosophy to somebody else, but it's coming from you still, even if the idea is the same. It's still unique to where you're at that moment. So we're all kind of like borrowing words from each other and
just borrowing
and inspiring.
Well, and isn't that why we read other people's literature to inspire us?
Right.
So we look at other people's art. We listen to other people's music.
Mm-hmm.
We all have those little muses in us.
Right.
Some aren't as loud as others, but they're there. And yeah, I think that stealing like an artist, find those things that inspire you.
Mm-hmm.
Music, yeah.
Right. Right. I love being like able to guess, what was their muse and just thinking about it and then talking to someone about like when you were writing this, like what were you going through?
What were you thinking about?
Yeah, I had this guy send me something he wrote, and I was like, this part made me think of Nietzsche, and this part made me think of T.S. Eliot, and this part, but it was totally unique to him. But I was like, it was just the allegory and like the madness, and I was like, oh, okay. And then when I said that, he was like, that is so amazing that you caught that my influence,
like wow,
and I'm like, well, I just spent a lot of time reading her work.
agree more than most people do.
Right, but
Yeah.
like it was beautiful because I hadn't seen anyone in my own generation writing in that kind of style. It's almost like it kind of died off, and like now it's resurfacing, and I was so excited. I was like, oh, a new version of
Yeah.
of the same madness that Nietzsche felt, but in this day and age. We have different concerns now. We're going through different things psychologically than even he was going through, so it comes out a little different.
Everything old is new again.
Yeah.
So yeah, take that old painting and use that as an inspiration to create what's meaningful to you.
Yes, for sure. Do you feel that color can have an impact on us emotionally?
Yeah, you had said that earlier, and I was like, oh, yes. I yes, and more yes.
Mm-hmm.
How can you even, well, what would be the purpose of color if it did not affect you?
Mm-hmm.
Even, birds look for specific colors in nature, and fish look for colors in nature, and humans look for colors in nature as warning signs and whatever. How could you even believe that color didn't affect you?
Right.
And yeah, the whole, even going back to students that are colorblind, even people that are colorblind are affected by color.
Right.
Yes, color affects your mood. And then the whole subtleties of color. You and I were saying, take two colors and see how many different colors you can make out of two colors.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that could approach infinite, right?
Mm-hmm.
There could be a span of infinity between color and color. Those other metaphors for life, yeah, color is as different as people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's white. Well, no, it isn't. No, that's really not yellow. When you get down to actually studying color.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed like a lot of people on my Facebook and just people will show like their homes and something about our society shifted because like in the 70s it was so colorful in people's houses. They had all these wallpaper and and then even in like Mexico and stuff, they're still using all this color. And like I'm just so inspired when I see some of these other cultures and the way that they put color into their homes. But like I'm seeing it and it's like 80% of people, their houses, it's all white and gray and black and and like there's nothing like even their kids' toys, it's like a white toy versus where it used to be a rainbow,
Right.
and I'm like, it's like they want everything to be one shade of like white, and I'm like, what happened, And I feel like it shows a lot because like people do seem more depressed, they seem more isolated and so I'm looking at these sad looking color schemes, and I like she was saying earlier, I mean, I love black and white. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't want to just live in a gray world.
It has its place, but yeah,
Right.
I'm with you. And yes, yeah.
So
I
like
have one of those colorful kind of houses. Every room's a different color thing.
I mean, if you're sitting in a blue room, you're going to feel different than sitting in a gray room,
Yes.
and sometimes the gray might be good, especially if you have a lot going on and you want to be more neutral.
Well, and the purpose of the room,
Right.
dictating the color that you use for the room or the environment, because yes, we do know color affects us
Right.
physically and psychologically. So yeah, the ability to use color to affect.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know what this what are they calling this modern industrial,
Mm-hmm.
where everything's gray and silver, and it doesn't appeal to me. but-
Right. And that's like all the stores we go in and all the schools, all the, unless you create the color yourself, it's almost like you're just walking through shades of gray.
world.
Yeah, it's really weird because I don't feel like it was always like that. I mean,
I know it wasn't always like
you
that.
know, people used to love like decorating. You look at like the Victorian, and they have whole collages of all these different, you know, textures and all these little trinkets, and I don't know. It's like it's so weird to me.
It is very different. It is very different. I guess though, when you live this fast-paced life, and you want to come home and you want everything clean and no clutter. And, you know, maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's how you deal with your reality.
Right.
If I put too much color in there, it excites me and I need
Right.
to be calm. I don't need to be excited.
Right.
So maybe there's method to the madness.
Right. Like their creation comes when they're not at home. And so when they come home, maybe they want it to be just so simple, you know. But I guess as an artist, like I do create in my home. So it shows because,
Yes, I'm with
you know, I need to be able to just like pull colors out of thin air. I'll like just sit there and think about, okay, what color scheme am I going to use? I might look around the room and be like, oh, I'm really liking that shade of orange, you know? And so I'm like inspired by the little things, you know, but.
Yes, because I do exactly the same thing. You know, and depending on where I'm painting. Oh, that flower is so I love that pink. I'm using that pink today.
Right. Yeah.
That
I mean,
will be my pink.
yes. It's like sets you up for these little bits of inspiration when you're just existing within a beautiful place.
And then the complementary color thing. And and isn't that always a great place to go? You know, oh, what color do I use next? The complement,
Right.
right? Stick the compliment. You can't go wrong.
I
It'll
know.
draw attention.
That's literally like when I pick out my outfits so often, I'm like, how can I make this boring outfit pop? I'm like,
Yep.
I guess I need bright orange tights to go with this blue. Like,
And it works.
it
doesn't
really does. It
Every
always
time.
adds. It always adds a little bit of life in.
Every
for sure.
time, for sure.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap up?
Don't stop creating even when it's hard.
That's a good one.
Really, that's it.
Right.
That's the basis of what I wanted to say. Because sometimes it does get really hard. But try to do something every day. Little something every day. Even if you got to get those canvases that are like the size of a quarter and just paint a line on one. Just do that.
You know, even with exercise, you know, we talk about the body, you know, oh, we got to exercise, we got to eat good. But like, what about our soul? Like, what about our mind? You know, like we need to exercise them too. So I always like read a little poem, make a little doodle,
Little
you know?
art journaling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put some marks on a page.
Right.
And do your little meditation and then sit down and do a doodle about it.
Right.
Take the time to make a mark.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Take the time to make a mark. That's the quotable. We need to write that down and make a meme about it.
Oh, we could do that too, can't we?
Right. Yeah. That'll be our expression today. We'll make a meme.
I'm going to write that in the journal now.
Right.
That'll go on the side of one of these blocks. I'm working on my remnant series right now.
Okay. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you guys so much for just taking the time to come out and making space for this. I've really loved this conversation and getting to share something that I'm so passionate about with other people that get it, you know, with the world. And I think we need it. I think people almost just giving them permission to be creative. Sometimes maybe that's the only thing that was holding them back, is that they just, you know, thought they couldn't. But we're like, nope, you can. Everybody can.
Everybody's got that creativity in them.
Needed some
Everybody.
validation. Here's your sign.
This is your sign.
Make your art. It doesn't even have to be good.
Right.
Do Inktober. Yeah, if you haven't started, do Inktober.
Yes, I love that.
And you can do it any time of the year.
Right, yeah, for sure. So, all right, well, thank you guys so much. And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.